Alright, good people, so welcome to this very interesting comparison between what I would consider to be two best full towers of 2019. The reason why I want to compare these two cases is because they basically cater to the same audience. They're large enough to accommodate ambitious water cooling systems. They're also priced in the same bracket, with the Phanteks slightly cheaper at $189 versus $199, and actually available to buy versus the O11 XL that's been out of stock everywhere. One interesting tidbit about the Enthoo Luxe 2 is that it's been renamed to Enthoo 719 because Thermaltake, out of all brands, had suggested it was too similar to their sister company Luxe 2 that makes like mobile stuff. So Enthoo 719 it is. May I remind you, Thermaltake has an H200 enclosure. How interesting. So let's do the feature breakdown so you can decide which one suits you best after this. Your eyes haven't seen anything like it yet. The new Razer Blade Pro 17 packs a beautiful and fast 4K 120Hz panel with gorgeous vibrancy and color accuracy with incredible clarity, awesome for creative work that will never disappoint, with a fantastic future-proof I/O as well. It's also a touchscreen so your fingertips get some action. The bezels are tiny, the chassis is sleek, the fiery keyboard is perfect, that trackpad is massive, the hardware is epic with RTX. Man, the Blade Pro 17 is a complete package. Experience smooth 4K gaming, linked below. Alright, so first let's cover the size difference, as the O11 XL is significantly smaller but with a slightly wider frame, despite the dual chamber design on both cases. I was also quite surprised to find that they weigh the same too, about 14 kilograms or 31 pounds, and that is because of material differences. So the exterior frame on the 917 is actually mainly plastic, which is how they're able to achieve all these smooth curves and style complications without skyrocketing the price point. The only non-plastic pieces on the outside are centered, which are sandblasted aluminum and look awesome, while on the O11 XL, there isn't even a single drop of plastic anywhere. The exterior panels are all brushed aluminum with strong metal frame, and that's probably why it's slightly more expensive. The TG panel on 719 is humongous and swivels to open. It can be locked at the front with a thumb screw and has a long peg for support to eliminate any sag, while the rear side panel also has so much going on for it. First, we have another TG window that partially reveals all three SSD caddies. Secondly, I love the ventilation pattern on here that matches the character of the case. And lastly, the fine dust filters are magnetic with a special frame design that lets you easily place them in the correct spot on the panel to eliminate any potential dust gaps. The O11 XL also has a unique panel approach where the top panel secures the rest of them in place and you pull them out individually. This means no thumb screws and the exterior remains beautiful. The dust filtration on here is not as fancy as with Phanteks, with just this regular magnetic strip that are quite restrictive. That is why I prefer the dust filtration on the 719, because the fine mesh used here is very effective against particles without choking off the airflow, and they are magnetic with a pull-out type for the bottom. The same on the XL, by the way, as this is the only fine mesh filter present on the Lian case. Let's continue with many other similarities between the two, like the exterior ambient lighting strip. I love the integration on the Phanteks enclosure that spans all the way from the bottom across the top with this good looking cohesion, and an interior strip too right below the motherboard to separate the bottom chamber, while the O11 XL has a strip running across the front only, looking good without too much bling. On Phanteks, you can sync the lighting with your motherboard and even add accessories to the male connector, or if you have any other Phanteks lighting gear, just plug them into this port, while on the O11 XL, it only has the motherboard sync 5V ARGB connector. The I/O is pretty much the same as well. On Phanteks, it's hidden behind the front cover with 4 USB 3 ports, Type-C Gen 2, separate audio jacks with lighting buttons. On the O11 XL, it has the same I/O at the front, but 2 USB 3 ports are located in the front foot to break it up a little bit. And that means that you'll need 2 motherboard connectors for the USB 3 cables, as there are 4 ports in total. Now, the interior of each case is quite different, but notice no fans are included out of the box. Both support up to EEB motherboards, so your preference will most likely depend on what radiators you plan to use for your system and if a second system is something you care about. So for example, with the 719, you can install an ITX motherboard in the bottom chamber. This ITX panel is included, but I will say the metal is quite thin, so careful not to show off your finger strength, but you will need to buy a riser cable and the Revolt X power supply that's capable of powering 2 systems at once, and you can reroute the reset connection from the front I/O to power the second system. This area can also be used for an extra power supply or for storage when you stack any of these 4 drive cages here, or if you're mounting a radiator at the bottom. This is the only bracket that's actually removable from the case, as mounting anything in the front or top means working inside the case. As usual, all the mounting is on strips for most flexibility, but I am just a little bit surprised at how soft all these parts of the frame are, especially for the price point, while everything on the O11 XL is properly rigid. The main interior highlight of the Lian case is how the motherboard tray is almost layered, opening up a lot of the room at the front for the side radiator mount that is also just built into the frame with mounting strips. The bottom fan bracket, however, is removable, as that is the least accessible area when installing radiators or fans. And so here's the entire breakdown for radiator support inside the O11 XL. You could do triple 360s with a beefy 65mm at the bottom and the top, but with my 45mm thick rad and a set of fans, we are right underneath that motherboard. 280mm are compatible too for top and bottom, and because the case is now wider versus the original O11, you have a 120mm fan mount for the rear exhaust and up to 169mm for GPU height. What's really cool is you could install a radiator on the side with the fans outside of the frame, as you have 65mm until you hit the bottom fan bracket and 50mm on the other side until the panel. Now the Phanteks case has larger radiator support because it is taller, up to 480 on the front or the side, with up to 360 for the top and bottom. The bottom is limited to 120mm wide radiators, nothing wider will fit, while the front and side radiator relationship is almost binary. You either have a front rad or a side one, as they're so close together, only slim radiators will fit when you occupy them both. Important to note that fans can be installed on the other side of the frame, with these SSD plates covering whatever side you're not using, so the Phanteks case has basically more options, but also more limitations, including if you install these drive caddies on the side plate, you can no longer mount a radiator to the front. Also, only the Phanteks case has a drain and fill ports. I'm surprised there isn't one on Lian. Also, the vertical PCI slots are available by default on 719. You just need a riser cable, while on the XL you need to buy a full bracket that rotates all of your PCI slots separately. I also find it super interesting that we have hot swappable drive cages with Lian, 4 caddies in total to avoid any cable mess. You could further install 3 SSDs on the rear side bracket, but this will be a pain to route. And we also have these individual covers with SSD mounts that go instead of the side radiator. While with Phanteks, the back layout is more traditional, with dual channel Velcro cable pass-through, a fan hub with 7 headers, and a large cover in front of the power supply for visual organization. And I do prefer the motherboard tray layout on the Lian case, as it just gives me a cleaner outcome when it comes to cable management versus the flat tray on the Phanteks enclosure. And so the thing is, my standard case system does not represent what these two are designed for. The Enthoo 719 is way too large for air cooling only, so you have to fill it with radiators, especially that whole area beside the motherboard, and because of that additional height in the bottom chamber, either an ITX motherboard and or bunch of water cooling hardware. And the same goes for the O11 XL, although that case I feel it covers a larger audience because it is just a slightly larger O11 dynamic, and that's a really popular enclosure to accommodate taller GPU blocks and extra radiator spacing at the bottom and the top. While the 719 is really pushing that whole dual system agenda forward, which I appreciate because this case is affordable for what it can do and its performance orientation, and I appreciate that the target audience between these two cases overlaps. It's the enthusiast water cooling community, but either of these cases is doing something uniquely different in their own right. All right, guys, let me know which one you would pick. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out this other relevant content. I'll talk to you in the next video.